Welcome, lovers. I don't know what I'm doing, but you probably already knew that, and welcome back to our room. So I recently, and by recently I mean like the day before yesterday, went to an acupuncture appointment at a place I hadn't been to before. This is my second time experiencing acupuncture, and it was weird this time. So the first time I ever experienced acupuncture was actually on a cruise ship because my sister, for anyone who doesn't know us, is a dancer. She used to dance on a cruise line, and we actually went to see her at one point during that. When we first got on the boat, I had a knot so big between my shoulder blades that I literally could not stand up straight. Like, there are pictures from that first day of us being there where I'm like hunched over because I couldn't stand up straight because it was so tight and it hurt so bad. So what we did was there was an acupuncture thing you could go to on the ship. So it was like, hey, let's try it and try to give me some relief because I did not want to spend that entire freaking week miserable. So I went to the appointment, and it was the whole you lay down on the table after getting undressed and stuff like that, and they do it like in your back because, you know, the back was where the problem was. So that's kind of where they needed to reach. All in all, it was a really good experience. I went, they did the thing, I almost fell asleep while I was laying there at one point. I honestly didn't even feel the needles. Like, I felt them go up on the needles, like the thing that held the needle to get it to go into my skin, but I didn't actually feel the needles. So there was no pain or discomfort or anything like that. I had maybe 2 muscle twitches during the process of my body relaxing, but that was about it. And by the time I was done, I was more relaxed than I had ever been in, like, my life. And I don't know if it's just because my spine doesn't like to stay in place, or if it's because I grew up dancing, but I have always had back problems. Like, sometimes it is the fact that my spine's just not where it's supposed to be, but most of the time it's just that I have really, really bad knots. All the time. No matter what I do, I get so many knots in my back. I've been told it's because of my anxiety issues, because I'm always tensed up, but it's terrible sometimes. And recently, it's been pretty bad. Probably because I have a lot of life stuff going on and have a lot of, like, nervousness and anxiety going on, so it's, like, worse than normal, or at least worse than my normal. But because of that, I've been dealing with a lot more, like, really, really bad, tight pain and knots and things like that, and the knots have actually been pulling on my spine, making it go out of place, which is why I've always been the kind of person to be like, you know, acupuncture and chiropractor should go really well together. But that's beside the point. So because I've been dealing with that kind of stuff recently, I've been talking about wanting to go to an acupuncturist again because of the amount of relief I had the first time. So as a gift from my mother, she was like, hey, we're going to pay for you to go to get acupuncture done. You know, it's a very nice thing to do. My mother is very kind. But she wasn't really sure how to go about doing that because we don't live in the same state anymore. So she has to, like, look at the ones within my state that are within a certain distance of me and that have good ratings, all that kind of stuff, to try and figure out somewhere I can go. So once she confirmed with my fiance before it was gifted to me that it was, like, not too far away and that it had good ratings and stuff like that, she's like, here is this place that you can go to, and they give you, like, a free session first to see if you like it, and then you can, you know, go from there. And I was like, great, that sounds like a great way to figure out, you know, if you like a place. So I decided to go the day before yesterday for my trial thing, and I definitely needed it because just on the drive over there twice I had, like, sharp waves of pain go through my back because of the frickin' knots. So I was excited to get some relief. I got there, I was greeted, they're very nice. They had that online thing you could fill out of what kind of symptoms do you have, which one is the worst, and the thing that you're here for today, all that kind of stuff. But there was also, like, a whole section for, like, cosmetic stuff, because apparently you can take care of wrinkles and that, I don't know, something like that. But I don't give a shit about that. I don't need that. I'm not old enough to need that, and even if I were, I wouldn't do it because I don't care. Smile lines, crow's feet, whatever you want to call it, it's just proof that you have felt emotion in your life. I don't care to get rid of it. So I go into the room, and, like, it's a nice room, and the lights dim, there's some nice music playing in the background, but there's only chairs. They're like recliner chairs, like those electric, you push a little lever and it like reclines you back. But that was it. There were no like tables to lay down on. It was just the chairs. So I was very confused as to how they were going to help me with my back if there wasn't a place for me to lay on my stomach. So the lady, when I went to go sit down, was like, you can put your stuff in this basket, put your shoes and your socks in there too. And I was like, don't know why I had to take off my socks, but okay, I guess that's fair. So I did that, and I was really uncomfy because I'm really used to wearing socks all the time because I have poor circulation and my hands and feet get ice cold very easily, and it's very uncomfortable. So I sat down, slightly uncomfortable, and started reclining the chair a little bit because they had these big TV screens with just like nature footage passing around. And it was very pretty, but also a little weird. Not in the situation that it's weird to have it in that kind of environment, but weird because I'm not used to that kind of environment. So after like 10, 12 minutes, something like that, this dude came over to me to talk to me about stuff, and he was very nervous. His demeanor and his tone of voice and like the way his body language was very unsure and uncomfortable, and immediately made me doubt that this was going to help. So trying not to be judgmental, I was like, well, maybe it's his first day. I know how nervous a person can be on their first day. I've been there before. Not gonna judge. That doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's doing, you know? So he sits down, starts talking to me about like my issues and stuff like that. And I'm just like, yeah, it's all this kind of stuff. This is what's going on. He's like, how long have you had it? I'm like, pretty much always. He's like, have you done acupuncture before? Yes, this one other time. It's basic conversation stuff. But during that whole conversation, there was something that was just a little bit off. Like, I don't know if it was something he said or if I was just still put off by his demeanor and body language, but I was just like, this doesn't seem right. And so I was like, I don't know how you're gonna get to my back since I'm laying on my back, or is there like somewhere for me to turn over? He's like, oh no, we are gonna do stuff with like your hands and your feet and all that kind of stuff, and it'll help because it's connected or something. It was that kind of a thing where he was like, oh, this part of your body connects this part of your body, so if you fix this, it'll help fix this. And for some situations that makes sense, not for this. So first of all, the very first thing he did was he put stuff on his fingers to like clean my skin, and he went boop, like on the middle of my forehead and then on like right here. And anyone who knows me can tell you that I have a thing about the middle of my forehead. This whole area, do not touch it. I hate when anyone touches the middle of my forehead. I don't want anything touching or put on or covering or attached to the middle of my forehead. If I'm wearing like a hat and it goes across my whole forehead, that's different. That's not the same. But if it's just no. Like, it drives me nuts in like a freak out kind of manner from the core of my being. Do not fuck with the middle of my forehead. So immediately after him doing that, I was like, whoa, what are you doing? Don't do that. And he was just like, oh, I was just gonna stick a needle there for some fucking reason. He was like, that's one of the places that helps with relaxation the most. I was just gonna put a needle there. And I was like, no, you're not. Like, first of all, the middle of the forehead for a lot of people is a very religious thing. So the fact that you would just do that without giving any warning or, even asking, hey, is this like a religious thing for you? Should I not touch it? Or anything. No, he just straight goes for it. And I was just super, super uncomfortable. Like, I'm so confused as to why he wouldn't give warning for that. I'm very uncomfortable. Do not touch my forehead again. I don't care how relaxing it's supposed to be. You're not putting a needle in the middle of my forehead. Like, I know that the way I am personally is like very much an overreaction. So I tried to be calm about it and nice, and I was just like, please do not. I'm very uncomfortable. Like I really tried not to be like mean, I swear. I don't know if it came off that way anyway, because I was just trying to hold down the freak out that just happened, but So he was like, oh, that's okay, I don't have to do that spot. Thankfully, I mean, even if he thought he had to, I wouldn't fucking let him. I'd have just fucking left. Anyways, he proceeded to stick some right, like, here behind my ears. Weird spot to put him. And, like, again, I immediately noticed this was very different from the last experience I had, because I could feel them in my skin. And, like, they're supposed to be as thin as, like, a human hair, which is why you don't usually feel them. So I was very confused as to why I could very blatantly feel where they were. So I was like, well, maybe it's just that it's right next to my problem area and it's really tight and pulling on it. Maybe that's it. Even though I knew that's probably not what it was. And then he moves on to my feet, which I don't like people touching my feet either, but it's a lot less of a freak out and more of just I prefer people not touch my feet. But he goes to put some needles in my feet, and it hurts. It is not supposed to hurt. Like, he went to put it in, he went like that, and immediately my body went, ow, because it hurt. And not only did it hurt, the pain lingered, which is not supposed to happen. Like, with acupuncture, if it does pinch, it's only supposed to pinch for a second and be done. But no, it hurt, not pinched, and it kept hurting. So I was like, that's definitely not right. And he put like 4 or 5 in each foot around like foot ankle area. And it took like 4 or 5 minutes for the pain to subside. And during that time, he started putting them in my hands, which, again, I don't see how this is going to help my back. But like, he put one over here and some over here, and just like my feet, it hurt. And like, while he was doing that, I asked him, how is this supposed to help my back if it's nowhere near my back? And then he goes to explain, it's like, oh, it activates the natural healing process of your body. And I was like, okay, how is that going to help the fact that I have knots in my back? I don't have a sprain or an injury. I don't have like scar tissue. I have knots in the fascia, which is that like layer of tissue that balls up, and that's what we call knots when we get tense. Like, I don't understand how that's going to help. And he's like, oh, well, it increases blood flow and that helps relax. And I'm like, okay, I don't think that's the problem either, because I have anxiety. My blood flow is pretty constantly pushing, so even if it was not so great at blood flow, it would still be going enough that it would have helped. I don't think that's the issue either. But I'm like, okay, whatever. I said I'd give this place a try. I'm gonna give it a try. And he's like, all right, I'll be back in like 20 minutes. We'll see how it's going. But before that, like even before that, like 5 seconds after he put these ones in, he was like, are you starting to feel some relaxation in your back? And I was like, no, it's been like 5 seconds. And then like 3 more times before he was done putting the needles in, he kept being like, so is it loosening up? How does it feel? I'm like, the same. What? And like, after all of this, he was like, I'm gonna be back in 20 minutes and then we'll take the needles out, see how you're feeling, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, great, whatever. So I was just laying there staring at the little screen above me because I was leaned far enough back that it wasn't like strained to look at it. And I was just like, let's let my brain wander, I guess. But I couldn't, because I could feel the needles. I could feel where they were the entire time. And like I told him at one point, they're kind of uncomfortable. And he was like, oh, sometimes that happens while your body's relaxing. And I'm like, I don't think that's how that works, but okay. And I got an itch in one of my toes. And you know how you do that thing naturally when you get an itch in your foot that you just like move your toes? Well, I did that, or rather I tried to, because the moment I even tried to slightly use my muscle, severe pain just shot through my leg because of the needles. And like, I don't know if that's normal or not. I've never had needles in that part of my feet before, or my ankles, but I was like, that's not right. I couldn't move or tense or anything with my feet or my hands without severe pain, which was a problem because if I'm sitting and relaxing for long enough, my skin starts to itch. Because you know that whole situation of when your body starts falling asleep, you'll get like little twitches and itches here and there. My body does that, but I get a lot more itches than anything else, but I get like excessive itches. It's part of my issues with my nerves. But that started happening a lot, and I couldn't scratch because it hurt. I couldn't move around. And like I could like move my hand like this and like do that if something itched, but if I tried to do this, the pain was terrible. And then at one point, about like 10 minutes in, my left foot started twitching, like really hard twitching, which again hurt because of the needles. So like it was twitching because of the needles, but because the needles were in there, the twitching was extremely painful, but I couldn't stop the twitching because of the needles in my hands. And like at some point during this process, I decided to actually look at the needles, and there is no way that these are the thin as a hair needles that most acupuncturists use, because I could very clearly see the width of them. Like this was nothing about this experience was pleasant. Something that also was strange to me was during this whole process of me sitting there where they're supposed to leave you alone for 20 minutes, the guy kept coming up every like more like every 7. The guy kept coming up every like 7 minutes and being like, how are you feeling? Is your back finally relaxing? Is the pain going away? Like, not only was it annoying, but the way he was saying it and his body language, I'm not going to accuse them of this, but the impression I got from this behavior and his demeanor and the way he said things was that he was trying to convince me that it was getting better just by repetitively asking, oh, it's getting better, right? You know, like the whole trying to do psychology on somebody, but it's not really working. And it really irked me. It really irked me. I don't like being tricked or lied to, and that made me feel like I was being tricked and lied to. So I get through the 20 minutes, he finally takes the needles out, and as soon as he takes out the needle right here, I get a shooting pain through this finger, and it still hurts. 2 days later, this right here, this whole part of my finger just hurts. Like, it feels like sharp pain. Like, if I touch it, it hurts. And, like, if I move it too much, it hurts. I don't know if you've, like, fucked me up or if it's just my body freaking out over what happened. But it still hurts, and it's been 2 days. So when he did finally get everything out, and I started getting up and getting ready, he's like, how you feeling? I'm like, I don't really feel any different. Honestly, I kind of feel worse. My body feels worse than when I came in. Like, I didn't say it that way. I was just like, I don't feel any better, honestly. I don't think my body likes the process that you guys use because some uncomfortable things have been going on. And he's like, oh, well, it's just, probably the starting process. And then he starts talking to me about setting up a whole, what's the word? I want to say system, but that's not the word. But he starts going on about, like, here's the treatment process for the healing process, the relaxation process, the keeping it from getting worse again process. And he's like, so what I want you is like, so if you decide to stay with us, I want you to come in twice a week for the next 6 months. And that should fix it right up. And like, That was a very rude way of mocking him. I'm sorry. That was not called for. He was genuinely, he seemed like he wanted to actually help, so sorry. But like, he was talking to me about all this stuff, wrote it out on a paper while I was putting my shoes and socks back on and grabbing my shit, and I was just thinking the whole time, there's no way I'm ever coming back here. Ever. And so we left and we went to the front, and he talked to her, and then I had to talk to her, the front lady person, and she was like, these are different kind of deals we have. This is month to month. This is the package deal, that kind of stuff. And I was like, good to know. She's like, let us know if you want to come back. And I was like, I'll let you know. Because if I wanted to come back, I'd let them know. But, I don't want to go back. So I left, and then I sat down in the car, and immediately my whole body just started hurting and aching and being upset. And my digestive system was like, fuck you. And my head started hurting. For a process that is supposed to be healing, it did the opposite for me. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure that this form of acupuncture works for some people because, they're still in business. But I also got the impression that most of what they actually know how to do is cosmetic. So I get the impression he didn't really know what to do with me since I wasn't there for cosmetic purposes. Obviously, I'm going to have to go somewhere else to actually get the right kind of acupuncture for me. But that's my experiences so far. And it was interesting. So I hope you liked this video. If you didn't, that's perfectly okay and perfectly understandable. But I hope I'll see you in the next video anyway. Until then, I hope your day is just as lovely as you are. So, bye. If you were a chicken, you would be impeccable.